My mother started dating my father-in-law, just so I couldn't marry my fiancé. According to her, he would be my brother. But if you think that sounds crazy, wait until you hear the rest of the story. This might sound like I have a horrible mother. And well, I do. Bad luck for me. My family and my life really are that dramatic. And the only reason behind it all is my 44-year-old mother. If I told you she was 14, you'd probably believe me, even though that's impossible. She's always been kind of a mess, for lack of a better word. Not because she doesn't shower, but because she lives for drama. She can't stand not being the center of attention, and her self-victimization is through the roof. Honestly, it's torture being around her. Sometimes, I curse fate for making me her daughter. If you've ever heard of the ovary lottery, where you're born into either a first world or a third world country, this is the same, but with mothers. Only, so far, I haven't met a worse one to make me think, well, at least my life isn't that bad. The only good thing is that my grandparents practically raised me. My mom had me when she was only 19. She was in no way ready to be a mother back then. Honestly, I don't think she's ready even now, but I'm an adult already. I don't even know who my father is. Mom insists she doesn't want to tell us, but honestly, I don't think she even knows herself. My grandparents don't know either, otherwise, I'm sure they would have told me. When she got pregnant with me, she refused to give me up for adoption and swore she'd take care of me herself. Needless to say, she was completely unequipped for motherhood. She couldn't hold a job for more than a couple of months. That's when my grandparents had to step in and take care of me. If they hadn't, who knows where I'd be now, maybe working in a circus or something. They're gone now, but they're the ones who raised me. They're my real family, and they always will be. My relationship with Mom has been tense, to say the least. By the time I turned 12, my grandparents were getting too old to care for me properly. Mom had a somewhat stable job at that point, so they sent me to live with her. The next 6 years of my life were an absolute nightmare. She was a serial dater. Every 6 to 8 months, there was a new boyfriend trying to play the father figure in my life. The problem was, if they liked my mom, they couldn't have been much better than her. Sometimes those boyfriends had kids of their own, and honestly, those kids weren't doing much better than I was. Plus, Mom was super quick to move them into the house. Now I suspect that's because she couldn't afford the rent on her own and needed someone to share expenses to survive. Anyway, some of those boyfriends had children, and in almost every case, the kids were much younger than me. So automatically, I became the babysitter. You could say I learned very early what parentification meant. The worst part came when I was 17. It was a tough year at school, and I was struggling with some health issues. Then Mom brought home her new love, along with his 3-year-old son who had severe autism. Unsurprisingly, they left me in charge of taking care of him. His name was Matt, and he was a real handful. I don't blame him, he was just a little kid, a baby. Maybe in retrospect, I could have been kinder to him. But at that time, as a tired, angry teenager, I just couldn't stand that little boy. I was exhausted, with my mother, her flavor-of-the-week boyfriend, and all the responsibilities dumped on me just so she could go out and sleep with someone. I had to miss so many birthdays and school events because I was trapped at home watching over him. I was one of the best actresses in school, and they wanted me to play the lead in the annual production. We were doing a play about Cleopatra, and I hid it from Mom and her boyfriend because I knew that if they found out, they'd never let me participate. I even told my theater teacher what was going on at home. She was so kind, she understood and tried to help me as much as she could. She let me stay an extra hour after school for rehearsals. I told Mom it was for extra classes and that I needed those credits to graduate. It was all a lie, but not the bad kind of lie, you know? Not the I'm studying at a friend's house while actually sneaking out kind. It was a justified lie. 2 weeks later, somehow she found out that I was in the play, and that there were no extra credit classes. She made me quit the production immediately. I begged her to reconsider. I told her they had already arranged care for Matt for those 2 weeks, so it wasn't like they couldn't do it again for the night of the show. I promised to take on more chores, more responsibilities, anything, if she just let me keep that one extra hour. She refused. The next day, she dragged me home from school, claiming Matt had a meltdown. And yes, he did, but part of me still believes she provoked it, just to prove that I was needed at home. That if I didn't stop being selfish, the poor kid would suffer. My theater teacher talked to Mom twice, begging her to let me stay in the play. She really tried, but Mom wouldn't budge. It was awful. That was the day I completely gave up on my mom. Nothing she could ever do would redeem her in my eyes. Needless to say, I hated Matt, I hated his father, and I hated my mother, and I made sure they knew it every single day. I had no reason to be civil anymore. There was just one thing I ever asked for, and they weren't even willing to give me that. There was no way out. So, those were some pretty bad months. I was doing the bare minimum just to get by. And the day I turned 18, I got the hell out of there. I went to stay at a friend's house. Her parents knew what I was going through and supported me a lot. I left a note at home saying there was no need to look for me, that I wasn't coming back. There wasn't even any legal way to force me to return anyway. And that was the last time I spoke to my mom until last year. I had no contact with her, or with any family member for that matter. My friend and her family basically became my family from that point on. Eventually, I left that city, and now I live in a different one with my fiancé, Noah. Everything was fine, until last week, obviously. I'd been engaged to Noah for about a year, and we're getting married in 6 months. During all that time, I had zero contact with my mom. But a couple of months after I got engaged, she sent me a private message on Instagram. I have a public account, so it wasn't exactly hard for her to find me. It's not like I was actively trying to hide from her either, she hadn't bothered me for years, so what was the point? It was weird. I considered not replying at all. But her message was full of apologies, so I answered. Just a few things, like, okay, fine. It wasn't some big I forgive you moment. It was more like, yeah, I saw your message. There was no reconnection, no deep talks, nothing more than a few exchanges here and there. Sometimes she'd ask how I was doing, that kind of thing. For months, that was the only contact we had. And honestly, I was fine with that. I peeked at her profile. She looked clean, not from drugs, but from men. She seemed to be on a better path now. She wasn't with Matt's dad anymore, and there didn't seem to be anyone new in her life at the moment. If there had been, her wall would have been full of pictures of him like he was some kind of trophy or something. My engagement wasn't a secret, there were photos on my Instagram of the ring, the little celebration we had, and all that. My mother eventually saw it. When she did, she asked why I hadn't told her before, during one of our conversations. To be fair, our conversations weren't exactly deep. I've had deeper chats in my apartment elevator, about the weather. She tried to get involved in the wedding planning, to carve herself a little place in it, but I told her no. To be honest, she wasn't even invited. I didn't think I needed to spell it out, we hadn't seen each other in years, and our chats were basically, how are you? Fine, thanks. Little did I know she was about to ruin everything for us. After that awkward conversation, our deep and meaningful talk stopped completely. I almost missed them, and yes, I'm being sarcastic. Because honestly, I didn't even notice that my mom had stopped texting me at all. There were things in my life I didn't care about, and then there was this. That's how little she mattered to me. At least, until recently, when she came back, in full talkative mode, as if we were best friends and she was about to share the biggest secret of her life. She was typing like crazy, telling me everything that had just happened to her earlier that day. Here's the summary, she said she really liked this guy and wanted to move things forward with him. They'd had 2 dates. She'd met him online and was sure he was the one. If I had a penny for every time she said that, I'd be buying Reddit right now, and still have enough left for a burger or two. Then she sent me a picture of the guy. It was Noah's father. Jackson, 51 years old. That was the biggest what the hell moment of my life. I replied, "That's not your date. That's not the love of your life. That's my fiancé's father. Stop stalking random people online." She didn't reply to that. So I let it go, thinking she had probably watched too many episodes of CSI, imagining herself as some hacker for stealing a picture of a guy from the internet. I even laughed a bit when I told Noah, but that was it. None of us talked to his dad about it because we thought it was just another one of Mom's crazy stories, and we didn't want to drag him into it. I thought that was the end of it. Mom went radio silent afterward, and I figured things were back to normal, me forgetting she even existed. Big mistake. Huge mistake. My mother hadn't been my mother all this time, she had evolved. She'd turned into Mother 2.0. And no, that wasn't a good thing. It meant her narcissism, her dramatics, and her victim complex had all leveled up, with way more firepower. One day, while visiting Noah's father, we were having a casual chat. Then he mentioned that he and my mom were actually dating, and he found it ironic how things had turned out. Obviously, I wanted to know how the hell that was even possible. That's when he told me everything. She had found him online. They started talking, and then he traveled to my old city, and she came to mine. No wonder I'd had chills that weekend. They were taking things slow, apparently. But even Jackson could see there was something going on. So could I, my awful mother. He hadn't connected the dots until I told him she was my mom. He didn't follow her on social media, and thankfully, I don't look too much like her. Although, knowing my mother, now I've unlocked a new trauma. What if she stole me from the hospital? We sat down with him and calmly tried to explain that dating my mother was a terrible idea. Her son, my fiancé, literally said, "Have you ever seen a movie with a witch? Well, that's who you're dating. Run. Run for your life." We were shouting, gesturing, doing everything we could to make him understand. At one point, my fiancé was holding him by the shoulders, shaking him, but Jackson just laughed. He's always been pretty laid back, acting like it wasn't a big deal. Everything he'd talked about with her, the little he knew, was enough to make him think, she can't be that bad. Yeah, that's what everyone says in a horror movie, right before they get an axe to the head. Well, that axe was my mother, and she was going to hurt much worse than that. Last week, Mom reached out to me again. She said I needed to cancel my wedding. I replied with laughing emojis, because honestly, it was the funniest joke she'd ever told. And that's saying something. Once she told me she loved me. But she kept insisting, completely serious, using big, dramatic words. I told her her opinion didn't matter at all. Then she said she would make sure I didn't marry my brother. I asked, "What the hell are you talking about?" She said she and Jackson were getting serious, and that technically made Noah my brother. Which, according to her, meant I couldn't marry him. I told her no, Noah is not my brother. At worst, she's dating my fiancé's father. But she refused to back down and even threatened to get the family involved if I didn't listen. By that point, I was completely done with her. I told her to go ahead, I didn't care about that so-called family anyway. My only family were my grandparents, and they're gone. So, as far as I'm concerned, she can kiss my ass and go tell whoever she wants whatever story she's spinning now. I also told her, if this relationship is so incestuous like she claims, then why did she start dating Jackson in the first place? She knew within 2 dates that he was Noah's father. I said, if she honestly thought I was going to give up my fiancé, a relationship that's lasted years, for her random boyfriend, and who knows if they'll even last a few more months, sorry, weeks, no, days, then she must be high on something strong and having one hell of a psychedelic trip. After that, I blocked her, but not before sending all the screenshots to my future father-in-law, so he could see what kind of lunatic he was dealing with. Now, I've got people blowing up my phone, relatives of hers, I don't consider them my relatives, telling me I should cancel the wedding because it looks bad. So now uncles, aunts, people I haven't spoken to or even met in years, are all over me, demanding I call it off. It's stressing me out so much. I've had to keep blocking numbers left and right, and every day there are new fake accounts messaging me. They call me a pervert, an incest freak, all sorts of names. My father-in-law has seen not only the screenshots but also the messages I keep getting, and he's starting to open his eyes to all this. But not fast enough. We're practically in DEFCON 1 here, and he's doing nothing, or at least, not telling us anything. I've spent the whole week just blocking people, here, there, everywhere. Only God knows when this torture will end, or maybe the devil, since she clearly plays by his rules. Edit. No, I'm not a stolen baby. That was a joke. My grandparents would have noticed if my mother suddenly showed up with a newborn overnight, no pregnancy, no nothing. I've even seen photos of her pregnant, and honestly, I still wonder how I ever came out of there. Nothing should come out of there. Nothing should go in either. But somehow, men keep falling for temptation. Update 1. Noah thought we might need something even more solid, not just screenshots from some random Instagram chat. Talk about a risky mission, but we decided to get proof. So, I unblocked my mom and told her I wanted to talk, on a call, not over text. She replied that unless the call was about me canceling the wedding, she wasn't interested. The only time she'd agree to talk would be if I canceled the wedding, and not only that, she wanted me to show receipts as proof. Nothing a little Photoshop couldn't fix, right? I found a random receipt online, edited it, maybe someone had bought some really shady stuff with it, but it looked legit enough. It even had something like deposit cancelled written on it, which was perfect. When we called, she was rude as hell. She said if I hadn't cancelled the wedding, I'd be dead to her. Honestly? When she finally finds out, it's going to be the happiest day of my life. According to her, I wouldn't be able to face society, because, you know, brother and sister getting married, yada yada. I told her to relax, maybe take some horse tranquilizers, and it took every ounce of patience in my body not to scream at her. I had to pretend to be calm and empathetic when all I really wanted was to travel back in time to when phones still had cords and strangle her with one while we talked. Anyway, I tried reasoning with her, calmly. Deep down, I knew that wasn't the real reason she didn't want me to marry Noah. I just wanted her to say it. So I told myself, think like a scientist studying chimpanzees, stay patient. I tried every trick to get her to open up, and eventually, she did. And the reason? It was exactly as self-centered as you'd expect. The real reason she wanted me to cancel the wedding was because she wanted to be the first one to get married. She didn't say it directly at first, she started with, "You don't deserve to be a bride and have a wedding when your own mother never got to have that." I asked what she meant, but she didn't answer. So I pushed a little, and all the venom came pouring out. It was like popping a pimple, the more pressure, the more crap came out. She said I didn't deserve to be happy or have my life together when she had worked so hard to provide for an ungrateful daughter like me. That if I had any shame, I'd cancel the wedding and let her be the first to get married. I called her delusional. Told her she hadn't worked hard to provide for me, my grandparents had. For 12 years, they took care of me. She didn't pay a single cent for me. And when I did live with her again, she just used me as free childcare for her boyfriend's kids. When I confronted her with that truth, she completely lost it. She started screaming over the phone like a madwoman, calling me every name you can imagine. And to be fair, I wasn't exactly calm either, I was matching her energy. She said I'd stolen her life, and now I was also stealing her chance to be a bride. Apparently, she had asked Jackson for a break, something we hadn't even known about until that point. I told her she had wasted her own life by choosing to get pregnant so young and never getting her act together afterward. That her miserable love life and loneliness were all her fault, no one else's. There's a reason every man leaves her, first, because she picks terrible men, sorry, Jackson, but if you fell for my mom, you kinda deserve it. And second, because she's a selfish, unbearable narcissist who relocated her brain to her vagina, and left it there. That's when I ended the call and blocked her again. I was boiling with rage, but at least I had recorded everything. Noah and I listened to the whole thing later, and he couldn't stop laughing, both at her and at me. He said he'd never seen me so furious, or heard me swear like a truck driver after a 12-hour shift with no coffee. Then he joked, asking if I gave private lessons, because he had a basketball game coming up at work and needed to improve that side of himself. I didn't find it funny. I've always thought of myself as someone who doesn't swear much, but my mother? She can bring that side out of anyone. Later, we went to talk to his father. We already knew he and Mom had taken a break, but we weren't sure if it was permanent. According to Jackson, they'd had a third and final date, during which they talked about her being my mother. He said, it was fun while it lasted. But even Jackson could see there was something off, and so could I, my horrible mother. He hadn't put the pieces together until I told him she was my mom. He didn't follow her online, and thankfully I don't look that much like her. Still, knowing my mother, I've unlocked a new trauma. What if she did steal me from the hospital? We sat with him and tried, calmly, to explain that dating my mother was a terrible idea. His son literally said, "Have you ever seen a witch movie? That's who you're dating, run for your life." We were shouting, waving our arms, doing everything to make him see reason. At one point my fiancé grabbed Jackson by the shoulders and shook him, but Jackson just laughed. He's always been so laid back, like it wasn't a big deal. The little he knew about her made him think, she can't be that bad. That's the exact thing people say in horror movies right before someone gets an axe to the head. That axe was my mother, and she was going to be worse than that. Last week Mom called again and told me I had to cancel my wedding. I replied with laughing crying emojis because it felt like the best joke she'd told yet, and that's saying something from a woman who once told me she loved me, mind you. But she kept insisting, serious as ever, talking in grand, dramatic terms. I told her her opinion meant absolutely nothing to me. Then she said she would make sure I didn't marry my brother. I asked what the hell she meant. She said she and Jackson were getting serious, which, technically, made Noah my brother, therefore I couldn't marry him. I told her, no, he is not my brother. At worst, you're dating my fiancé's father. She refused to back down and threatened to drag the family into it if I didn't obey. By then I'd had enough. I told her to go ahead, I don't care about that family anyway. My only family were my grandparents, and they're gone. As far as I'm concerned, she can kiss my ass and tell whoever she wants whatever she wants. I asked her, if she was so obsessed with this supposedly incestuous scenario, why did she get involved with Jackson in the first place? She knew within 2 dates he was Noah's dad. I said, if she thought I'd give up my fiancé, a real, years-long relationship, for her fling, and who knows if they'd even last weeks, let alone months, then she was tripping on some serious acid and having one hell of a psychedelic journey. After that, I blocked her, but not before sending all the screenshots to my future father-in-law so he could see what kind of lunatic she was. Now I've got her relatives blowing up my phone, people I don't consider family, telling me to cancel the wedding because it looks bad. Uncles and aunts I never had contact with are on me to call off the whole thing. It's stressing me out. I've been blocking numbers left and right, new accounts pop up every day. They call me a pervert, an incest freak, every name under the sun. My father-in-law has seen the screenshots and the messages I've been getting, and he's starting to wake up to how crazy this is, but not fast enough. We're at DEFCON 1 and he's not doing much, or at least he's not telling us what he's doing. I've spent the week constantly blocking people here and there. God only knows when this torture will stop, or maybe the devil, since she clearly plays by his rules. Edit, no, I'm not a stolen baby, that was a joke. My grandparents would have noticed if Mom turned up suddenly with a newborn overnight, no belly, nothing. I've seen pictures of her pregnant and I still wonder how anything could come from that. Nothing should come out of there. Nothing should go in either, but men still fall for temptation. Update 1, Noah thought screenshots alone weren't enough, we needed something more damning. So I unblocked Mom and told her I wanted to talk, on a call, not by message. She answered that she wouldn't talk unless I cancelled the wedding. Not only that, she demanded I show receipts as proof, receipts someone could easily fake with Photoshop. I found a dubious receipt online, doctored it to look like a big deposit cancelled, and used it. On the call she was rude and told me if I didn't cancel the wedding, I'd be dead to her. She said when the world found out, brother and sister getting married, yada yada, I'd be ruined and couldn't face society. I told her to calm down and maybe take a horse tranquilizer, and it took everything in me not to scream. I had to act sympathetic even though all I wanted was to go back to the days when phones had cords so I could strangle her with one. I tried to reason with her calmly, because I suspected this wasn't the real reason she wanted me to cancel. I told myself to be patient, like a scientist studying chimpanzees. After prodding, she finally spilled the truth. She wanted me to cancel because she wanted to be the first of the two of us to get married. She started with, "You don't deserve to be a bride when your own mother never had that." I pushed and all the venom poured out. She claimed she had worked so hard to provide for an ungrateful daughter like me and that I should be ashamed and cancel so she could be the first bride. I called her delusional and told her she hadn't provided for me, my grandparents did. For 12 years they cared for me, she didn't pay a cent. When I lived with her again, she used me as free childcare for her boyfriend's kids. When confronted, she lost it and screamed, calling me every name imaginable, accusing me of stealing her life and her chance to be a bride. Apparently she'd even asked Jackson for a break, something we hadn't known. I told her she'd wasted her life by getting pregnant so young and never getting her act together. I said every man left her partly because she picked awful men. Sorry, Jackson, if you fell for my mom, you kinda deserve it, and partly because she's a selfish narcissist. I ended the call and blocked her again. I was furious, but at least I recorded the whole thing. Noah and I listened to it later. He couldn't stop laughing at my mother and at me. He said he'd never seen me so angry or heard me swear like a trucker on a 12-hour shift with no coffee. He joked about me giving private lessons because he had a work basketball game and needed to improve. I didn't find it funny. I always thought I wasn't someone who swore much, but my mother can pull that out of anyone. Later we went to talk to his father. We knew they'd had a break but weren't sure if it was permanent. According to Jackson, they'd had a third date where she told him she was my mother. He said, it was fun while it lasted. Update 2, things seemed fine, and then one day I got a call from an unknown number. I had a feeling it was Mom so I answered, ready to listen to her nonsense and maybe have a laugh. Instead I got total crazy screaming. She called me jealous and said I'd ruined her life since the day I was born. I told her to calm the hell down, but that didn't work. She kept ranting, blaming me for everything, even for a peanut butter toast that fell off her table that morning and, of course, landed peanut butter side down. Physics hates her. Apparently, no 6-second rule will save that toast. After that call, Jackson told us Mom denied being horrible. But then she started texting him at odd hours, begging him to listen to her and not to his worthless, no-good son and his promiscuous wife, meaning me. Things spiraled. Jackson had to defend his son and me, basically calling her a loose woman, not exactly words I'd expect from my father-in-law, but he saw her as morally compromised given everything she'd been doing. Then it came out that she'd been spreading the story that they were actually dating and that a proposal was imminent. The delusion level was off the charts. If there were a delusion meter, my mother would have blown it up and half the state would disappear. Jackson asked her not to contact him again, but she didn't listen and turned up at his house in the middle of the night on a random Friday. He filed for a restraining order. It wasn't granted, but it was enough to utterly unhinge her. You can't say she's happy. She wasn't. When I told her she'd totally shot herself in the foot in the race to be the first to marry, I didn't stick around to hear her answer. I hung up and blocked that number. She's probably spitting venom because she hasn't been able to reach me at all. Honestly? I couldn't be happier. Update 3. Noah and I got married. It was a lovely ceremony, no petty, demonic mothers anywhere in sight. And I'm writing this from our honeymoon in Cape Town. Everything went perfectly, to my surprise. I was confident she didn't know where the wedding would take place, or even the exact date, but there was still a tiny chance, right up until the end. Jackson, of course, was there at the wedding. We laughed together about the whole situation. I did my best impression of my mother, the way I remember her, and he said I nailed it because, apparently, I looked just like her. He's actually seeing someone now. He even brought her as his +1 to the wedding. And no, she's nothing like my mother. Although, I'd been thinking, If my mom had forced me to babysit the child of her new partner, also known as my husband, it's not like I could have refused, right? We've been taking good care of each other on our honeymoon, at night, in the morning, all the time, you know what I mean. Anyway, my father-in-law looks happy, and Noah and I are happy for him. I asked if there was any news about my mother, and he said no, with a thank God look on his face. So overall, things didn't turn out nearly as bad as I'd feared. I hope I won't have to post another update. I don't expect any more drama, so this might be my last one. I didn't think things would end so smoothly, but I couldn't be more grateful that they did. This wife is now going to be very busy enjoying her honeymoon. Edit. No, my father-in-law didn't get the restraining order. He filed for it, but it wasn't granted. Still, that was enough to make my mom furious. She's one of those people who think nothing bad can ever be held against them, even when they totally deserve it. Update 4. My mother got married. She finally achieved her long-awaited dream that, according to her, I had ruined. I wasn't invited, obviously, but that's not the surprising part. I found out thanks to someone who thought I should see it, posts on her profile asking the wedding guests not to tell me where the ceremony would take place. Apparently, she was afraid I might show up and cause a scene or something. I laughed, I won't lie. Imagine her being afraid of me when she's the unhinged one. But she lives in her own version of La La Land, and she can believe whatever she wants. It's kind of cute if you think about it. Like when a kid has imaginary friends, except in an adult, it's a reason for institutionalization. But yes, she did get married. From the photos I've seen, her new husband is quite young. Maybe he's just one of those people who look younger than they are, but he definitely has that lost look, like someone who doesn't realize the huge mistake he's making. It's like when you take your dog to the vet for its shots. The dog's all happy, thinking you're going for a walk, and then ends the day with a sore butt and resentment for life. In the pictures, I didn't notice any distress signals from the guy, but maybe that's just me, unable to believe anyone could love or care for my mother willingly. Deep down, I'm actually happy for her. I wish her the best. If she's married and getting everything she wants from her husband, that's less drama for the rest of the world, and that's always a good thing. Update 5. My mother is no longer married. Terrible news for the world, but especially for my mom, who was probably over the moon about being a wife. But let's reflect for a moment. Beating your husband until he ends up in the hospital can have that kind of effect on a marriage. On the bright side, a few years in prison will give her plenty of time to catch up on her reading, think about her mistakes, and maybe even find a new husband through a pen pal program. You're probably thinking, wait, she just drops this bomb and doesn't explain? Well, I thought the same when someone told me, I think your mom's going to prison. That led me to read the local news from the city where I was born, and to piece together the whole timeline. Turns out, my mother had been beating that poor, terrified man for quite some time. She probably beat him into proposing. I have no proof, but no doubts either. According to his testimony, she'd hit him for everything, for not taking out the trash, for not asking how her day went, for supposedly looking at another woman on the street. But what finally sent him to the hospital was this. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He claims he was just watching something random, though who knows. My mom, of course, thought he was talking to another woman. And instead of just confronting him or asking to see the phone, like a normal person would, well, a normal crazy person, she went full psycho. She grabbed a ceramic ornament from the house, I really hope it's not the one I'm imagining, and dropped it right on his head. Apparently, he was bleeding badly afterward, feeling dizzy, and she drove him to the hospital, but only after making him promise to lie about what happened. He didn't. He told the truth. My mother was arrested, and the marriage was over. I say I hope it wasn't the ornament I'm thinking of because, well, that one would have hurt a lot. Anyway, those are the main details of the case. I've summarized and changed a few minor things so I don't dox myself, but yes, I spent an entire afternoon reading every article and sipping tea. Come on, did you really think I'd miss gossip like this? Honestly, it's not that surprising that my mom turned out violent. She'd always had a heavy hand with some of her partners, though not so much with me. When we argued, I never let her intimidate me. Maybe she realized that hitting me would backfire. With some men, though, she knew she could. I've seen her slap them or smack the back of their heads, things like that. But she'd never thrown something that heavy at someone's skull before. Maybe marriage intensifies emotions or something. Who knows? For my mother, it was either a mental institution or prison. Whoever bet on the latter, congratulations, you win.